Welcome to the New Masculine podcast. This is a place where masculine identifying people come together in community to disrupt outdated models of masculinity and together construct new models for our way forward as men. As a special note, while this conversation is between men, this podcast values all beings and seeks to create positive impacts for all. I'm your host, Travis Stock. I am a master life coach, an equus coach, which means I often partner with horses when supporting clients, and I'm a teacher. In my coaching work, I am passionate about the balance of masculine and feminine energies in each of us, regardless of gender. I seek to help others nurture a relationship with both types of energy, which often leads to a greater sense of wholeness. And yet what I found in my work with men is that many of us have been taught messages about what it means to be a man by first teaching us to avoid anything that is associated with the feminine. That avoidance leads to few experiences of intimacy, emotions outside of anger, vulnerability, or even a sense of belonging. Striving to comply with these models of masculinity has many of us feeling isolated, ashamed, unworthy, afraid, angry, and depressed. That's why I started this podcast, to bring men together who are ready for something new, something more whole. When someone decides that they're open to stepping forward on a healing journey, they will likely find that there is no shortage of different modalities and approaches available to choose from. There's the more traditional therapy route, EMDR, somatic experiencing, coaching, breathwork, equine facilitated learning like I do, and so many others. Today, we are going to dig into one that is a little less traditional, but is getting a lot of attention and quickly gaining popularity. The deep healing and self-discovery that's possible through the use of guided psychedelic and other expanded state experiences. While I have found this modality to be a significant part of my own path, I think it's best we bring in an expert, one who specializes in working with men, to help us better understand what it's all about. Michael Tierno is a transformational guide and the co-founder of Men of Integrity, a community offering immersive retreats that help men reclaim their true selves, cultivate emotional resilience, and achieve clarity on who they aspire to be. And while Michael's work isn't limited to only men, his work through Men of Integrity is particularly interesting to me as we continue exploring how we redefine modern masculinity. Some important identities Michael has claimed are guide, knowledge seeker, and skeptic. So this should be fun. Let's now welcome him into the New Masculine and learn more about his approach to healing and transformation. Thanks for joining me, Michael.
Thank you, Travis. It's an honor to be here. Enjoyed listening to a couple episodes of your podcast, and I love what you're doing.
Oh, I appreciate that. Is there anything I haven't mentioned already up front that it feels important for people to know about you as they kind of start to understand who you are?
No, I think that'll come out in the sauce, in the wash, as we talk about. I would say one thing about the intro. This is not a traditional thing, but we've been doing this long before. We've been doing expanded states work for personal transformation, especially in indigenous societies, for long before. This is like the most traditional way to
I guess that's so fair. It actually is very traditional, and yet, I think maybe it doesn't feel that way in many of like sort of the Western current ideologies and culture. But I think it feels actually really right to me that so much of the actual solid work that's going on around this kind of work comes from such a lineage of way back and so much practice and times when people were actually connected to the earth rather than separated from the earth and understanding our interconnectedness in the world. And so, yeah, I take the correction and hear
not
it.
Not even just when we think about it, like quote unquote indigenous cultures in the Amazon, or Native American traditions or African traditions, but you have the Kikion in Greece, ancient Greece, which is also a expanded state entheogenic experience that was, our Western ancestry was cultivated. We got that sort of modality of connecting with our internal divinity got kind of squashed with the coming of the church. If you can find God within yourself, what do you need the church for? So it's kind of a political move.
Yeah. Oops. Don't say it. Don't say it out loud. Oh, well, I definitely want to dig into this because I'm right on board with you. And I think there's some interesting parts of this that we can talk about. But first, let's talk about you as a guy. I'd love to hear a little bit about what it was like for you growing up. What kind of man were you trying to become as a boy? Like, tell me what comes to mind when you think about that.
As a boy, I was definitely a rough and tumble boy. my greatest sort of like memories of childhood was playing this game called Keep Away in first grade. That's something that's really, and it was basically, there was no rules to the game. It was basically keep the ball away, and it was a tackle sport. It was bloody elbows and bloody knees, and then, you know, teachers put the kibosh on that, and it was always kind of trying to sneak to get that that sort of competitive adrenaline rush of, you know, boyness in while going to Catholic school. I did sports from, you know, not that sports are necessarily a boy thing, but I was interested in playing sports, not watching sports, but playing the sports throughout from the time they were made available to me in third grade. I did martial arts from the time I was 12 till I was 16, and then again in my 30s. My parents were from Spain, so physical affection wasn't something that was taboo in my family. You know, in Spanish culture, there's always the, you know, the kiss on both cheeks, men or women, doesn't matter, you know, familial relationship. I felt kind of the pressure of, you know, my dad would drop me off to school rarely, but because I walked to school, second grade already. Back in those days, we didn't quite helicopter the kids as much as we do now, but I remember dropping me off, and he went to give me a kiss, and I kind of like retracted a little bit because my friends were around, and he was like, "Oh yeah, too proud to give your old man a kiss," or something like that in Spanish. And then I remember like, whoa, what's going on here? Like, what was that about? And never failed to give my dad a kiss on the cheek since that day. But that was a formative memory.
Isn't that so funny? I can think of my experiences of my childhood. My dad is a very affectionate guy, and definitely to this day will still give me a kiss. And I just like, it's funny how we all kind of go through that phase where in that adolescent time frame where we start to feel the pressure of like, oh, that's not cool to do. Don't kiss your dad. Don't. And yet it's like we grew up in that family, and yet we start to like let the social structures around us, the other kids, the other the sort of peers, start to influence how we even relate to our own parents in an interesting way.
Yeah. Growing up, I was always kind of beaten to my own drum. Still do. Given the work that I do, you can imagine that that's the case. But beating to my own drum, and was kind of very vocal, very loud. You would call me the class clown when I was growing up. Always in a small band of a small amount of trouble continuously. Nothing big or nothing that required the police intervention or anything like that. But you know, a bit of a loudmouth in class, contrarian. If you know, I remember talking to a nun who told me I was going to go to hell, and I was challenging some fundamental ideas about Catholicism when I was, and she said, well, you know, I think you're just going to go to hell. And I was like, well, this doesn't make sense. So, and I was pretty young, maybe like that was like fifth grade. I either had allies or enemies as teachers. I had several teachers that really appreciated and gave me the space to like express myself in the way I wanted to be expressed, in the way I wanted to express myself. And then I had a couple of teachers that really tried to tamp that down out of me. I think one of them, I think, was born of malice. I always think of like that she didn't have good intentions. And another teacher, a nun, I really think that she was really trying to help me out. But every day I spent, you know, 500 to 1,000 sentences, but like Bart Simpson in this lady's class, in this woman's class. I will not do whatever the hell I did that day. Like literally every day, even the last day of school. But you know, kind of always been a little fearless in terms of that sort of thing. And I think that is tied to my masculinity, to my maleness, to the fact that I'm a bigger male, you know, gives me some privilege there. I think that I'm not super aware of, but I've thought about. That was childhood, was going through Catholic school. In high school, I also went to Catholic Jesuit high school, which was a totally different experience, right? It was much more like about philosophy and self-knowledge and know thyself. And there was definitely a spiritual aspect of it. But it wasn't as dogmatic as like my grammar school and junior high experience in terms of that. There was definitely gender roles punched into us in grammar school, being that it was, the 80s, 80s Catholic school. You get what you get. But I literally, like I said, one of my three little things: skeptic. It takes a lot to convince me about something, about anything really. So skeptical about everything. And I feel like I really try to have a logical train for any kind of belief I'm kind of holding to, and a willingness to, and I'm always willing to change my mind. That's been at the forefront of my kind of thinking. I feel like without a willingness or to change your mind on anything, if you're holding anything as dogma, that you're going to find yourself farther and farther away from being able to make sense in the world, make sense of the world, and make sense of your role in the world and your sense of self in the world, however that may be.
That's an interesting combination, being both a skeptic, somebody that's kind of going counter to what's given to you and questioning and pushing back on something, but also that flexibility and willingness to change your mind. I don't always find that those two qualities in a person nicely overlap and create and can find a peaceful way of being with each other. How have you made space for both sides of you? The part of you that wants to push against what's been given, or the things that don't make sense to you, and the part of you that's open to having your mind changed by listening to others.
Yeah. One thing that I've always done, I was always in the library. Even as a kid, I was hanging out with my mom yesterday, and we went to a bookstore with my son for Easter, and she was saying, "Oh, Michael and I used to go to the bookstores and spend hours in there." And I remember it would be like I was voracious about putting things, trying to figure things out. And so now whenever I hear something that seems counter to what I think or I'm surprised about, I said, "Oh, that's interesting," and I will go and passionately try and understand that. Oftentimes, even if it's a study or something like that, I'll go to the primary study, look it up. We have so much access to all these things. Say, "Oh, okay, this is what the study actually said," and background in being able to read those things. So I really go back and try and make sense of the things. And sometimes I find out, oh, okay, this was misidentified this way, or this was this. Okay, this makes sense. Now this makes sense. Now I understand what they were trying to say. This is where the error is. They're misquoting a study or whatever it is, or expanding the interpretation of the study to it, like too broad of a context. The study didn't say that or whatever. That would be like a small example, but just voracious appetite for hypothesis testing. That's kind of how I kind of think about it.
So you're sort of like, you've got a voracious pursuit of knowledge and accurate knowledge, not just somebody told you something, but you need to figure out the background behind it and test it several times. I heard you sort of acknowledging that religion, growing up in a Catholic school, that there were parts of that didn't make sense to you and you pushed against that. What other things didn't make sense to you growing up that you found yourself kind of pushing against?
What other things? Well, there was a weird, my first kind of like altered state experience where I felt like this is crazy was, I remember, I can't remember exactly the age, but it was kindergarten, first or second grade, might have been second grade. And we're in the library and we did a guided meditation in which I remember they guided us to be an eagle and flying off a cliff, and maybe it was child mind, ability to like really take that imaginational space or whatever. But it felt like a real experience for me. That really blew my mind. Like, I was like, wow, how do I get that? And they were like, well, that's what we're doing, the meditation, guided meditation today. I don't know who it was or what it was. And that's it. That was my only taste, but it was a taste that was foundational to me. Like, what was that? Like, how did I wasn't asleep. It was definitely a guided visualization, and it definitely felt as real as this, looking at you on the screen is. It was so real to me and so beautiful and profound. The experience of the wind and the wind on the feathers as I was flying over this cliff. It's like, what was that about? That was pretty. It kind of made me sort of be interested in consciousness without knowing what I was talking about as a second
Right.
grade. That kind of thing. In terms of, if we're talking about masculinity specifically, I don't know that I was questioning, that I even had space to question anything about what it means to be a man or a boy or anything like that. I was just kind of in the sauce
Yeah.
at the time. I've definitely done a lot of deeper diving into the aspect of masculinity, femininity, all that kind of stuff as I've gotten older. You know,
It's cool that you were accessing expanded states at such a young age, and even pre the use of psychedelics or anything, entheogenics or anything like that, that you were finding that just even in your meditation that you were led through in in early grade
I didn't know
school.
what was going on. I was just kind of following the instructions, and before you know it, I'm an eagle flying over a cliff.
That's great. I mean, it makes sense that you like the kind of work that you're in right now, and that you, such an early childhood experience of that expanded state, that ability to use imagination to take yourself to another place and to start questioning consciousness, or even start to relate to it in a different way, or even regardless of the language structures that you put around it, that you were able to experience it at such a young age. It makes sense that you would continue to follow and kind of look for those expanded states as a way of creating openings for yourself and for other people.
Yeah. In high school, I got into I started getting into reading about like Wicca and kind of like more, esoteric kind of stuff about consciousness and magic and all that kind of stuff. I was interested in that. And then I got super into psychology in high school, made that kind of got really passionate about it, and went to undergraduate and grad school for that. And that sort of idea of like a spiritual sense and stuff like that it kind of left me for many years, until I was 42, actually.
Wow.
So
It's a big gap.
It was a big gap, and being into that, and then into psychology, and then really becoming kind of a hardline rational physicalist for a long time. And then where I had my big change moment was going to Peru and drinking the Amazonian brew known as ayahuasca for the first time. That kind of is reminiscent of my little childhood experience, but much more intense, believe me.
I bet.
Much more intense experience that I had as a child, where I was like, eyes closed, dark room. This child was in a dark room, it was a library, but dark room, and having this huge expanded experience that was during a waking state, but including the classic ego dissolution experience, where you feel a connection with everything, with all other beings, with all the greater consciousness around us. And that really threw me for a loop. Immediately, I did the logical, as I work really kind of a logical way, I did the logical sort of assessment of like, well, that experience does not jive with my sort of metaphysics that I've been promoting. Mm-hmm. So the last 10 years have been, a journey of trying to unpack that for myself, to make sense of my sense of self, or getting closer to the idea of no self, and all these other kind of more esoteric kind of things that seem to fit more logically with my experiences, but still being skeptical. Like I feel like sometimes I'm a little narrow-minded in terms of what I'm willing to like promote, if you want to say, like where I'm willing to hang my hat on. I got a very narrow bandwidth that I feel very confident with in terms of my spirituality and my like connection with the divine, and a lot of stuff I'm like, well, I didn't know that this was probably more likely to be true. So I'm not going to dismiss that, but I'm going to kind of like vet that and see if I can have a personal experience with some of the more woo-woo stuff. But I'm quite skeptical about a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a kind of a healthy approach. There's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of interesting, ungrounded, woo-woo,
Mhm.
dangerous, harmful, harmless. There's lots of different things out there. And so I think finding your own relationship and your own understanding of the knowledge of those things is a good thing. I want to bring us back a little bit because there's pieces I want to pull you out on. So there's this time of your life where you went hyper rational, very linear in your thinking. Why were you drawn to those more like hyper realistic and rational viewpoints, and putting aside maybe the more spiritual side of you that you could maybe even play with in your childhood? But what made you draw, like, lean in that direction for a little while?
I think it was, you know, being enamored and misunderstanding of the scientific sort of way of looking at the world. I remember a conversation I had with somebody who said, who re-explained to me, because I defined myself as an atheist, and this guy was telling me, how can you be an atheist? Like, you can't prove that there is no X, right? You can only prove that something is, more likely to be true than not. And I was like, that's kind of true. And then it came into, I think it was just basically indoctrination through the, very kind of rigorous scientific sort of psychology program that I had, chosen to go to, which was very much, methodological, research methods, this kind of stuff, very skeptical about everything. It gave me a toolbox to assess things. So that's good. But it also made me a little bit rigid in being open to things that I didn't have, that weren't able to be measured and studied. And you would say that I put an umbrella that was a little bit too big, and, without, kind of lost myself in that scientific rigor, so to speak, and brought in the envelope too far in terms of what I was willing to entertain without it being under the purview of something that could be verified and, peer reviewed and a whole other stuff, which I think is super important. That's how we have all this technology. We're looking at each other from, thousands of miles away, real time. And none of that stuff could have happened without that rigorous sort of scientific purview. But I just got lost in my own sauce, and I thought I had a logical train, and so I behind that, and was a little bit inflexible in my thinking.
I think that's such a normal thing that happens to many of us, is when we start to find our sense of how to view the world, that we pretty much swing the pendulum pretty far in one direction, because that's how we make sense of the world, and that's how and that's what the people around us are making sense of the world. And so we start to kind of veer off pretty far onto one side of the spectrum. And then I think it's my ideal. I don't know if it's everybody's ideal, but my hope for everybody is that we all learn to kind of bring it back towards the center, that we don't look as things as either this or that there's a both and, that there's flexibility, that we can both have the rational approach that science gives us, but we can also have the openness and the less linear qualities of spirituality or woo-woo or interconnectedness, things that we can't prove through science at certain points. Because that is the tricky part about that sort of like science and rational side, is science is evolving all the time, and it's all based on what we can measure and what we can see. But our ability to measure and see things changes throughout time. And
Absolutely.
so like it's a ever growing field. And so to say this doesn't exist because I can't see it right now or measure it right now is limiting. And it does require some adjustments over time as we start to find new ways of measuring and seeing things.
Right. And yeah, I totally agree with everything you said.
What changed that for you? Like what made you drawn towards that ayahuasca experience that shifted your perspective?
I kind of stumbled into the ayahuasca thing. It's a longer story, but basically I was, with my wife at the time, we were very enmeshed in our lives together. We didn't do anything really separate. Like, we didn't have like a separate group of friends. Like, it was very enmeshed, and we were seeing a coach, and the coach told us basically to go do something on our own. And my first tack was actually I always wanted to learn how to kite surf. And so when I was going to plan my solo trip to go do something, what I wanted to do initially was actually had nothing to do with spirituality, had nothing to do with anything. It was to go to the Philippines, and there's this really fantastic place for someone who doesn't know how to kite surf to kite surf. And so I found that's what I wanted to do. But my now ex-wife was like, oh, well, that's something I thought we would do together. We'd learn how to do that. And so I was like, oh, okay, foibled. And then through kind of a longer chain of events, I spoke to a friend of mine and asked him, hey, maybe we can go do something together and go do some exploration. And he told me, while we were at a music festival and had been drinking, and I asked him, what would you do if you had, to do some journey, some adventure? And he told me that he wanted to go rappelling in the Amazon, that there was some kind of sinkhole that you could go down and you could see these blind fish and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, sounds good. Don't know anything about it. I think I've read about that in some, magazine when I was a kid. Let's check it out. I found out that there's a place that exists like that in the Amazon, that there's outfitters that'll take you down there, you rappel down the side of this thing. So I call him back and say, hey, I found the place that you're talking about. I found out how much it's going to cost, all this stuff. And he's quite overweight, this guy. And he says, are you kidding me? I was drunk. I'll die if I do that. And I was like, another plan down the window. Out the window. And but through the investigation of the Amazon, this was 10 years ago, so this ayahuasca stuff Michael Pollan hadn't written his book. This was like very much in the Reddit threads and stuff like that, and like very much underground. I discovered the ayahuasca thing and I was like, that's interesting. And so I vetted like, I don't know, 10 different places. I found a place that seemed to be a good fit for me. And I told my wife, hey, I'm interested in going to do this psychedelic brew in the Amazon. And she was like, you go do whatever you want to do. I have no interest in doing that.
She didn't raise her hand for that one, huh?
Raise her hand for that one. And so I ended up, and that was kind of like, that was quite the journey, because I'd done a lot of traveling by myself for work and for business. I used to work in a pharmaceutical company and international things. So I was used to traveling, but not like, traveling and be met by somebody and like have the have things organized for me. But this was a purely like pilgrimage out for self-discovery, which I didn't know at the time was going to be such a profound, transformative event in my life. So I go down there and I'm riding on the airplane. I'm, thinking, well, I had read all this stuff about the transformative impact of ayahuasca. And I was like, well, this is either going to be a big giant nothing sandwich, or there's going to be something on the other side of this. And I had no idea what that might be, but I didn't have even the languaging to like understand what that might be. Go down there, do the first journey, and immediately freaked out. Like, not verbally, I wasn't like screaming or anything like that, but immediately was like, I'm getting the F out of this place tomorrow. This is for me. You thought you were a big tough guy, Mike. You thought you could handle this. This is way too much. And then that took about an hour where I was kind of terrified. And then the words of the facilitator who was there, the shaman or who was there, he said, no matter what happens, in the beginning, he said, no matter what happens, in about 4 hours, we're all going to be sitting around here eating fruit. It'll be like, the experience will be over. And so the best thing I can do to tell you is to just trust and surrender to the experience. So I'm there like terrified and seeing all these like entities and all this weirdness. And as soon as I let go, I went into myself, and then it was like the most, the word I would use is bliss, because it was a sensation of like connection to literally everything simultaneously. And it was beautiful, like spectacularly beautiful and amazing and healing. And once I let go, it was like 3 hours of this just amazing experience that I didn't want to end. And also the all these downloads of like, dude, there's more to this human existence than you've been like giving credence to. Like, you better figure this out. You need to like come up with a new understanding of what your thoughts are of your role in the world. And it's been a journey ever since.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing to hear, sort of like, even just in that evening, how much the evening shifted for you, the panic that sets in, the I'm getting out of here, to the bliss that you experience as the night goes on. What do you say to people? Because I think, like, as you were sharing, you were saying, like, I was seeing all these entities. Like, I would imagine many people are kind of afraid when you say something like that, especially growing up in Christian cultures or in places where, like, monotheistic kind of things, to hear entities are coming through, that can feel really alarming and scary. And it sounds like you were even kind of scared in the initial phase of it. What do you say to people that are hearing about experiences like this and being like, absolutely no way would I put myself in that position?
It's a very good question. And I'll give you the answer that I give to anybody I'm working with.
Sure.
It's basically, it is kind of like a way to have the experience that helps to witness the experience without getting freaking out. And so what I tell people is, like, and I'll get to the thing about entities in a second. I always tell people, pretend you're at an IMAX. The theater is your mind, or theater is what your perceptual apparatus is giving you, and just relax, get as comfortable as you can. If you could get 1% more comfortable in your body, and then allow and just witness what's going on. And if you get anxious, ask yourself the question, is there anything objectively terrifying about what I'm witnessing or not? Or is it just because I'm not used to the experience? Is there anything about the experience? Like, if you were seeing this in a movie theater, would you be freaked out and having the same kind of emotional sensation? Or is it the fact that you are, or that this is an altered state of consciousness, non-consensual state of consciousness, that's freaking you out? Or is it the actual thing that you're seeing? And that's really very helpful for folks. Because when they're like witnessing, it's like, I was just seeing like little like faces and stuff like that. There wasn't anything actually scary about it. The scary thing had to do with my thought pattern of, like, is this going to stay with me forever? Am I going to go crazy? That was what I was actually terrified about, not about what I was experiencing. So setting that, those ground rules of like making the person feel super safe in the situation, in the setting, and then knowing, like, hey, if you're seeing something that's freaking you out, like, are you actually seeing something that is freaking you out, or are you just freaking out because of what's coming up for you? Paying attention to that. Why? What's the fear about? Fear is usually tied to something else, and unpacking that in the journey. Regarding entities, there's a lot of woo-woo stuff about entities being, that they're possibly being, negative entities or all that kind of stuff. And in my experience, I haven't seen any of it. I haven't seen any possessions or anything like that. To say that it can't happen, but I believe that, it just hasn't been something. Most of the entities and stuff that I've had, the pleasure, really the honor of, like, interfacing with, have been very gentle and compassionate and, like, curious, really. I don't know. It is probably my imagination, but there's curious to see my conscious present as I am to see theirs.
Yeah.
Like, hey, what are you doing here? I said, I don't know. Don't usually see you. Well, I'm here all the time. I just don't see you. Like, who knows what's going on in there?
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think that's really helpful how you're framing it up, because I don't know that everybody, I think maybe people might assume that once you're in that state, in an altered consciousness because of the ayahuasca in this situation, that you probably don't have as much choice anymore. You don't have a choice on how you look at this. You can't ask yourself that question because of the altered state that you're in. But you framing it up as that you can just ask yourself, is this objectively scary, or is this just something I'm not used to? Like, the fact that you can be in that state and still have a choice on how you're viewing it, how you're relating to it, I think is helpful, even just to hear it on my side of things, of like, that would help me settle down, that I'm still in control. I still have a choice in this situation, and I get to look at it in different ways. And also kind of points to the importance of having a guide, somebody there that can ask you those kind of questions, that these aren't situations that you just go into willy-nilly and go like, oh, sure, I'm going to do it all by myself. This needs a facilitator. This needs a guide there to help you unpack those things.
Absolutely. And in all the places that I put myself into these experiences, or people that I've worked with, with expanded states, there's always a protocol, because, and the protocol in the ayahuasca place, Heart Sanctuary I do down there, all you have to say is help. And someone is, we have such a good guide to participant ratio down there, that there's always somebody able to like, what's going on? 9 times out of 10 is, I can't find my water bottle, or I need help getting
I need to go to the bathroom. Yeah.
That kind of stuff. Help 99% of the time is that sort of help request. But on the 1 to 10% of the time where somebody's going through a thought loop and they're psychologically, emotionally struggling with something, there's tons of things that an effective guide can do to support. Like in Peru, a common thing is like, okay, let's go outside. And as soon as we go outside, change of frame, everything changes. It's like the stars are out there, and then like settle down, feeling the actual grass underneath their hands, and, lay them out there for a little bit and just keep company. Talk a little bit through the experience. What are you experiencing? Blah, blah, blah. And just, getting them back grounded. It's like, oh, okay, are you okay now? Okay, let's go back into the ceremony space. And that is super helpful. But if you didn't have that, if one didn't have that sort of, somebody there to help with that process, getting out of the thought loop is on you, right? So it's really, really important to your point of having a guide or a situation where that is offered. There's also, Travis, I want to say, there's a sub-segment of the expanded states sort of guides which I am totally opposed to, 100% opposed to, which is like, someone's having a hard time. This is like the more like harder lineages. Someone's having a hard time. Oh, that's the medicine doing their work, and let them go through the, dark night of the soul. And I am totally opposed to that, because not offering someone, still have to go through the experience, but not offering somebody, that hand hold of like, you are okay right now. You can continue to go on your journey when you're ready. But I will support you here for the moment until you settle down. Not having that, I think, is totally irresponsible and not good. And I think it speaks to, and in some cases, is lack of capability.
Right.
People are just trusting the medicine, man. That's totally against that.
I appreciate you saying that. It's actually really reassuring, because I think, especially as we continue to open this conversation to talk about how that applies to men's work, I think some of the ways that we're raised as men is to tough things out, to go it alone, to man up in those situations. And I think that just perpetuates something, that we don't need others to help us. We don't need connection. We're just supposed to go through that dark night of the soul by ourselves and rely on only our inner strength to be able to do that. And I think it's not in alignment with where I'm headed as a man. That's not where I think we need to go as men. So I'm really glad to hear that you both you give the space for the challenge to arise. It's not about avoiding challenge, but it is also to have the support underneath you enough, or the hand to grab, so that you can successfully navigate that challenge, so that you're not alone in that. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for your values around facilitation, because I do agree with you that there's limitation in your skill set if you're not there to grab somebody's hand, if you're just going to let them flounder by themselves, because we are social creatures. We're wired for connection. We're not meant to go it alone. And so don't force people out into the wilderness on their own.
Totally agree. I believe that this like go it alone kind of thing has to be a more recent thing. Like we grew up in villages and communities, and even 200 years ago, like small communities, and people supported each other and helped each other, shared food and all that kind of stuff. Not always, not everywhere, but I think we evolved in a communal sort of environment where we took care of each other to the best we could, and had rites of passage that we're like handing, the batons from one generation to the next, and, having these sorts of things, you know, connecting us to, connecting us both to the community and to like the broader tapestry of creation. And we don't have those things now. We are, thought of like, I am a meat robot walking through the world on my own, and I got to figure it out on my own. And offering not just in the expanded states, but offering in community resources and support so people can find, find that helping hand in their lives. It's really important as well.
Yeah, and we're seeing the consequences of our sort of hyper individualism. Men are struggling with more mental health challenges than ever. The suicide rates are sky high right now with men, as we continue to rely on our own inner world without having those rites of passages that happen within the communal sort of situation, without having support, without having places where we can be vulnerable in moments where we're struggling and ask for help. So I'm with you that this has been sort of a recent history kind of evolution of us that is kind of worrisome and not where I want to keep heading in our work. What would you say is the biggest thing you've learned from going to Peru and doing an ayahuasca ceremony?
I think the most important change in terms of how I interface with the world is I'm deeply forgiving and compassionate towards others. We have people in our lives that invariably don't do things like we want them to do, or challenge us, or behave in a way that that we see as counterproductive to their sort of, they're banging their head against the wall and it's affecting us. And I think it's not just from going to Peru, but for doing the work and getting to know, people that I work with on the deepest, most, cognitively, spiritually, emotionally intimate level, that you can kind of know someone in the direction of which, the guide client relationship works. Realizing that people do things not because they're trying to do things badly in the most part. And even if they are, there's always underlying reasons for it. They're scared, or they're, or they have some kind of belief structure that tells them that they have to control something or whatever it is. So deeply compassion and also recognizing that those people that oftentimes hurt us are deeply hurting themselves. And finding, you know, finding that commonality that everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants to be supportive. Everybody wants to be in community. And so often they find themselves alone, oftentimes by their own, assholeness, for lack of better, but
to their own creation. Yeah.
Their own creation. But that creation isn't because that they're at core a bad person. It's that they just don't know they haven't figured it out yet. They haven't figured out that there's a more easeful way of being in the world. And I would say that is, that deep compassion for others, even when they're not aligning with, how I would like them to be, and that is really embodied in me. I think that's the deepest thing. And I wouldn't say that that's just from the Peru experience, but it's from all the experiences, and, including experiences of kind of deeply understanding, like butting heads with somebody in something, and then having an expanded state experience and kind of understanding like, oh, this is their pain coming out. Okay, let me not butt heads with them, but let me kind of like approach it in a different way. And it's super helpful. And realizing that, it actually works, not in a manipulative sense, but like approaching people with compassion and empathy, just, gets you into their worldview in a way that we can work together better than butting heads, because
you're bringing up some like really cool relationship skills that are missing in our current world or underutilized in practice. I'm about to put on a workshop that's all about creating thriving relationships in the horse work that I do. And so helping people see situations and experiences through someone else's perspective, and then having a horse there also as a being that can offer some really clean and clear and non-judgmental feedback on what's happening. But so much of this is sort of conflict is normal in relationship. People don't act the way we want them to. They have their own agendas, their own belief systems, their own unconscious patterns, their own things that they need. And they don't always show up the way we want to. And so conflict's going to happen, ruptures are going to happen in relationships, but how do we actually move beyond that? And these pieces of like compassion, being willing to see from someone else's side, from their perspective, seeing someone else's pain that's driving their behavior, the willingness to try a different tactic with somebody instead of confronting them. Those are all things that I think we're kind of missing right now. They're not valued in our current culture. It's more about like dominating and winning and owning someone and canceling someone and all of the brittle sort of the things that are causing us to fracture from each other. And I love what you're bringing forward, that there are other ways to do it. And I love that in the expanded states have really given you the ability to tap into that, to embody it, to really own it within yourself and in your relationships.
Yeah.
So not everybody's going to make it to Peru. Not everybody's going to be signing up for an ayahuasca journey in Peru, in the Amazon. And so,
nor should they.
Right. Yeah. It's not for everybody. I know you do other kind of work and other kind of expanded states kind of work. You want to talk a little bit about what you are doing in your work and through Men of Integrity?
Men of Integrity is for men. It's a 4-day retreat. And then after one is done with the 4-day retreat, they get put into the community, so to speak. We're 40 men strong now so far. And in that community, we have like monthly support integration calls. There's a Telegram group. We have a hotline if someone needs some support for whatever reason. They can put in a hotline. Hey, can someone call me? We just launched that. I'm struggling with this issue, whatnot. So it's like we're really you have your expanded states experience in this 4-day workshop. You learn the information that we think it's important for everybody to know, every man to know, in the situation we find ourselves in this Western culture. It's profound. It's a profound excavation of self. And then you're not just left to your own devices afterwards. There is a community on the other side of it that welcomes you in and is supportive. And we have all kinds of activities that are related to that. We're starting now with our next group, which will be women run, which is going to be a women's retreat that's going to have a similar program, but different, because some of the needs of women are different than the men. And that's going to be led by women. We have our facilitators already getting ready and working on how that's going to work. And that's going to be launched at the end of the year. And then we'd like to do other groups, other mixed gendered stuff in the future, as it makes sense to add that as there's a need. What we find is like we have guys from all over the country coming to these retreats, and most of them don't know anybody. They come alone, sometimes with a friend, and there's some trepidation. It's like, what am I going to experience? I'm going to meet all these strangers. And what we do really well is to immediately set the container for vulnerability being okay. And modeling it like we're all, the facilitators are all kind of very masculine looking guys, and open books, smile on our face, and like, hey brother, come on, we got you. And we start with a very powerful gratitude and intention ceremony. There's almost always some tears. And one of the things that's interesting, Travis, that I think that we've heard from a lot of guys is, I am scared to be around men, period, full stop. I'm scared. These are all straight guys in this instantiation so far. But I am scared to be around other men. I'm scared to be open around other men. I'm scared to, like, they're this kind, I don't know what I can say. I don't know. Am I going to get judged maybe from being picked on as a child, from problems with their father? And then so one of the medicines that we use is just non-judgment and curiosity. So tell me more about that. Oh, wow. That must've been hard. Whatever narrative, whatever's going on. And it's such a relief. A lot of guys say, wow, I didn't know that this was even possible to be vulnerable in a group of, like, what do we get? 10 guys, 6 participants, 4 facilitators. I didn't know this was possible. This is a new way of being. And then bringing that along in the community, or on these monthly integration calls, there's not one where somebody doesn't shed some tears. They're going through something that they need some support on, and being able to shed those tears without any kind of shame or like even worry about how they're being perceived by the other guys in the group, because by this time, everybody sheds some tears.
I was going to say, it just takes one guy usually, and then everybody starts crying.
Yeah, sometimes there's been those.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing some of this. And it's very interesting to hear. It's sort of like the expanded states retreats, the 4-day thing is kind of just the doorway, the entrance point into the community. It's not even the whole thing. And I wanted to touch on, you brought up that sort of like one of the medicines you work with is non-judgment and curiosity. Mm-hmm. I'm so glad that you said that, because it made me think of a personal story. I was considering doing some expanded state work in a new community at one point last year. I was reaching out and trying to like talk with one of the facilitators to understand what their community was about, some of the values, how they hold things. And one of the things I brought to it was asking about, like, what's the makeup of the group? Is it all cisgender heterosexual men? Are there gay people there? Because as a queer person myself, I relate to that thing that you said, that most guys come in and say they're concerned about being in a group of men. There's some fear. There's some stuff my life has taught me. And in going into a community like that, there's already some resistance there for me. And my question was to see, like, how do you hold this? What do you do about it? What kind of conversations does the group have? Because I'm not going there to work on this piece of things. I'm here for something else. And I don't want my sexuality to be the focus of this thing. And the only question, the thing I got back from the facilitator, which told me that this wasn't quite the right container for me, was, this is Seattle. Everybody's accepting. I was like, oh, that's not curious. That's not non-judgmental. It's sort of like, don't feel that way, was all that I got. Yeah, it was dismissive. Exactly. And so I think what you're pointing out in that, like, tell me about that. Oh, that must have been difficult. When you actually just listen to someone's experience and hear them out, how much that drops the guard, how much that can create safety within the container to just be as I am. I don't have to be something else or feel differently than I do in order for you to accept me. And I just think that it's such a subtle thing, and yet it is huge in the end of the day in terms of creating a safety for that vulnerability you've talked about.
Now we get up in the morning, and if you don't want to get up, you're going to get some judgment and some riling. Let's go.
Okay, yeah.
Do the meditation, breath work, and morning movement. Oh, I'm tired. Come on, let's go. There's a little of that too.
Yeah. Hey, we all need a little external motivation sometimes, especially when sleep's involved. Yeah. A little peer pressure. We don't have to throw all of it out the window. We can enjoy some of the benefits of some peer pressure. So tell me a little bit more about some of the other values that kind of are the foundation of your work through Men of Integrity.
Well, I have them right here. Man of Integrity takes 100% responsibility for his life. He speaks kindly and humbly to others. He lets his actions speak for himself. He honors all women. He's passionate, courageous, does not fear vulnerability and authenticity. He stands up for others, always learning more, strives to be better today than he was yesterday and better tomorrow than he is today. That's kind of like the core values.
And how does that show up in your work? Like, I know like some places you'll see that kind of posted on the wall somewhere, but then nobody ever addresses it or talks about it. Like, how do you actually infuse that into the work that you're doing with these guys?
Well, it's all about these things. It's like we talked about fourth level responsibility, and there's a technique you can use that when I learned about it was like profound. And I don't remember the exact story I used, but it's like, think of a time when you felt like the world was against you and like you had no control over X, Y, or Z and blah, 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 blah. And it's easy in that case this is for like responsibility. It's easy in that case if someone's mired in that sort of state of victim mentality of like being like, oh, this happened to me. And then you just say, I want you to force this, reframe this, but see what was your role in it. And it's not that hard to do because I did this where I thought that, God damn it, this was, something happened to me and wow. And then I reframed it and I said, oh, I could have nipped this in the bud a lot earlier. I let this go far too long. And it was like, this was me. Now I can look forward in the future. And it was like, I was like, wow, this is powerful. If I pay attention, I can get myself out of a lot of like situations that I thought, were foisted upon me that were actually, there was places where I could have made differences. Vulnerability, authenticity, courage, standing up for others is like key. Like we talk about this. I mean, we talk about this through our experiences, through our failings, where I could have done better, how I would like to do better in the future. Um, you know, Two of my core things, I'm always learning more. Like I was telling you before, I'm on this kind of like you were saying earlier about the self-improvement kit. I'm striving to always be better today than I was yesterday and better tomorrow than I am today. And don't always succeed in that, but that's my intention, and not in a forced way of like, I got to find something. Like one of my things, I like to learn something new every single day. So fact thing, and I'll make a check mark. Oh, that's my thing for today. I learned this today. Good, done. So we talk about all these things. They're posted at the retreat. They're kind of like guiding wisdom. They're fundamentally things that Yoni and myself came up with, things that we would like to we've changed them now. I don't have the non-gendered, so a man of integrity honors all women. We have it now as we're moving into women and other groups. We've changed these to be honor all sentient beings. But as we're growing and we're learning and we're being more expansive in terms of the communities we'd like to support, these have changed a little bit, but they're foundational. I don't think you can argue with any of them.
No, definitely not. I love that you're evolving the language around that to so that people can feel and see themselves in it, and that you can reach more different kinds of people by changing the language of that. Like, it's a simple thing that creates more expansion, more ability for people to see themselves in that. So I love that you're doing that. If you think back on like your time of doing this work with Men of Integrity and the retreats you've done, is there a story that sticks out to you from one of the participants that's sort of like something you saw, some major transformation come forward that you'd be open to sharing?
I would be open to sharing a lot. The thing is, which one, right? What
Anything that you feel personally like connected to or inspired by?
I'm going to think about one guy in particular who came to 2 retreats actually. In the first retreat, this guy who's just a sweet, super smart guy, he came into it as a kind of reminded me of myself in a way, but quite not as articulate about it in terms of his metaphysics, in terms of like, there's nothing going to happen after you die. It's like you were just a meat suit where there's no free will. There's just like automatons on the thing. And he had a big spiritual awakening and was like, wow, I'm open. He's, just softened up in his life and in so many ways, just softened, more open, more accepting. He's just more easeful in his way of being, just how he approaches life. And then he came to another retreat too, and recognized how much fear of others, not just men, but fear of the world, just was kind of keeping him down. And he's working with that now. And part of his integration is to like say, like, what am I doing that's born out of fear, as opposed to like being able to live my most authentic and purpose-driven life, and like in asking himself questions like, am I not doing this because I'm scared to do it, and that's just driving me down, or because I don't want to do it? And it's a question to ask yourself. We had another person who didn't tell us all of their. Actually, this was even more powerful in terms of. So almost everybody that goes to the retreat drops some kind of habit that they're invested in, right? And it's not, we don't tell anybody, you got to do this, you got to do that, stop drinking, stop smoking weed, so stop playing so many video games. That's not on us, right? Because we're not judgmental. You do you, right? But their internal guide has been telling them for a while that I got to step up my game in this kind of thing. This isn't serving me, and it's getting drowned out by whatever cognitive sort of like overlay is drowning out that desire to make change. And then when you do the expanded states, it comes into like, oh my God, I do have to change, and they change. So we had one guy who didn't tell us that he was he was on a bunch of pain pills and a bunch of like opioid stuff. And in the middle of the 3rd day, he comes to one of the facilitators and says, I got to get rid of all this shit. bag of fucking shit.
Wow.
Throw it down the toilet. And then the next 3 days, part of the after. And then dude's going through withdrawal, basically. Not,
Yeah.
it wasn't like terrible, but I feel terrible. I got a headache. I feel nauseous, all this kind of stuff. Getting support through that. It wasn't anything that was medically, dangerous withdrawal levels, but felt shitty, really,
Yeah.
really, really shitty for a good, 4 or 5 days, and daily phone calls from the other guys in the retreats. How you doing? Getting through this, supporting him, and he got past it. Done, 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 done. Hasn't
Wow.
touched his kids. Got two guys in particular that had quite a strong affiliation with alcohol. A lot of people have stopped drinking altogether, but a couple of people that had quite a loving relationship with alcohol, that through the experience they had, and it's unique to them, and it had something to do with conversations they had with participants in the retreat in both of these cases, came out of it, and 2 years sober, 2.5 years sober now.
That's
better
wild.
connections with their better connections with their kids, like realization that shit, I'm recreating the not super loving relationship that I had with my dad with my child. Come back, first thing, I'm gonna hug my kid every time.
Yeah.
We're gonna get down to that deeper level, like connecting with them in an emotional way. What's going on with them, not being stoic with them any longer. Just so many stories.
That's beautiful. People interrupting their own childhood experiences and patterns and putting them on their kids. People making the choice for themselves to step away from coping mechanisms that maybe served them at one point but are no longer serving them or getting in the way. As we all know, around people with substance use, like people don't usually stop unless they make the choice for themselves. And so it's beautiful, even in that no one's prescribing to them that they have to stop. That's something that comes to them through their own self-discovery, through their own relating to other people and making decisions for themselves. That's really powerful. And even in that first story you shared about someone softening and finding ease in their life, like I think that can feel really threatening for us as men to soften in this world. So much of our life has taught us to harden up, and to soften feels sort of counterintuitive. It feels less safe. And yet what that guy's experiencing is more ease in his life, more compassion, more flow in his relationships. I think that's sort of what I'm always suggesting is that even if it feels scary to soften, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not the safest thing to do. It doesn't mean it will subtract something from your life. It actually is usually pretty additive to your life when you're able to soften, when everything inside of you is saying to harden up against life.
Yeah. I mean, just think about it. Try and be on tension the whole time.
Uh-huh.
How long can you hold that? Now imagine
Right.
that muscular tension, put that to your emotional, spiritual, psychological body, and know that you're holding on to that the whole time. It's just as difficult. We're just used to it. So when you soften it, it's like, just like release, like, okay, wow, I was holding on to that for a long time. No need to anymore.
That's what I love. Like, even you bring up the muscle tension piece, it reminds me of the work I do with horses, because horses externally can sense our muscle tension. That's when they can offer some of that non-judgmental feedback about like how much hardening we're carrying, how much tension we're creating that we're not even aware of anymore, that we're just to become part of our consciousness or our way of being in the world and our unconscious ways of protecting ourselves. And so it's like there's so many modalities. There's expanded states and psychedelics, there's horses, there's lots of different things, but they help us see where we are bracing against the world, where we're still coping with things that are not addressed, that we are still operating in an inauthentic way because we think we need to be somebody else in order to belong or fit in or be successful or whatever. And they give us the space to actually reconnect with our authentic self. And I just love that so much of what you're talking about is like the same thing. What I'm doing with my clients is the same thing, place you're getting to with your clients,
Absolutely.
maybe through a different doorway. But that's what we're all kind of looking for, is dropping back into our authentic selves and being able to show up fully as ourselves, not in the ways that life taught us we had to show up.
Right. And foundationally, we're all trying to get rid of the same kind of garbage. I mean,
Yeah.
not the exact same like structures of belief patterns and stuff like that, but we all got something.
Yeah.
And getting past those things, I don't even think those things go away. We just can see past them.
Yeah.
Like we can identify them and say, oh, there it goes again.
Yep.
I'm going to choose to respond differently and see how effective that is. And then finding out like, wow, that was a lot easier. That interaction went a lot better. I'm a lot happier. I'm a lot more easeful. All these things, like, let's keep going in that direction, and let's spread that word. And like you said, there are many paths to the same destination.
Well, thank you for being willing to share about the path that you believe in, the path that you're facilitating in the world, because I think that more people need to know what paths exist out there. And so some people are going to go to Peru, some people are not. Some people are going to go hang out with horses and me, some are not. Some are going to do traditional therapy kind of stuff out there. And there's lots of different pathways, and we can all, as men and just as people in general, find ways to navigate ourselves and the world and our relationships with the help of other people and with the help of other experiences that can teach us new things. So I really appreciate you coming on and being willing to share about the modality that you've developed and what you're bringing into the world.
Thanks, Travis. I appreciate you. I appreciate the work you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. If people wanted to find your work, wanted to find out more about Men of Integrity, wanted to find out more about your other work that you're doing, how do they find you in the world?
3 ways. Michael at michaeltiernoguide.com. That's my email. You can get up. And my website is michaeltiernoguide.com. And all the different projects are on that website. We have a weird, which we call it a weird website address for the Men of Integrity. It's moi.community.
Okay.
So moi.community. And then for ayahuasca in Peru, it's heartsanctuaryretreats.com. And that is the place that I needed to have, a place where I could send people, where I felt fully confident that things are totally kosher. And so that's the place that, I stand behind 100%.
Beautiful. Well, I'll make sure all of that's in the show notes so that people can find those easily, so that they know where those links are. Thanks again, Michael, for your conversation today, for sharing a little bit more about your work. I am sure that people will be intrigued to learn more about this kind of work and to confront whatever resistance they have inside of themselves as they hear us talking about these expanded state experiences.
And if they have any questions, they can just reach out to me. I love talking about this stuff. So
beautiful. Thanks for offering that. If people want to get in contact with me, you can go to my website at travisstock.com. You can find me on Instagram at Travers03. That's where some of the ongoing conversations of this podcast are going on. So if something touched you here, you have a question, you want to ask something, feel free to find me on there and we'll keep the conversation going. And if you're enjoying the mission of this podcast, please consider contributing through Patreon. That's at patreon.com/thenewmasculine. Thanks again, Michael, for joining me. And until our next episode.
Thank you, Travis.